Welcome to Leadership Latam. Today we are going to show you Nicolás Maduro's secret network to move gold, diamonds and cash. Nicolás Maduro is a thief. Only those who were partners in his looting or those who are still ideologically trapped in a lie that no longer holds up can try to deny that truth. In this report, we are going to show you the complex network of secret operations led by himself and his inner circle. This network was created exclusively to strip Venezuela of wealth and hide it outside the country to use for their escape. Nicolás Maduro always knew that his departure from power would not be easy. Dictators must flee from their subjects when the lie comes to light, and that is why he prepared with a lot of time to be ready and was accumulating wealth that is now estimated to exceed $5 billion. What is still not known is how he could do it. How did he remove gold and diamonds from his country? But now we are going to tell you in detail. Throughout his government, he maintained a network of secret operations that used a fleet of planes to transport large amounts of cash to and from Venezuela, evading international sanctions and strengthening his regime with foreign currency that he received without declaring. The information we present to you comes from various sources, including a detailed report from the United States Department of the Treasury, verification of reports on flight routes carried out, travel tracking of registered passengers, and money flow crossings with companies, ghosts and purchases that were paid in gold, in addition to the meticulous investigations of independent journalists. The secret operation worked by coordinating the use of a fleet of 13 planes that were used to extract precious minerals and return with part of the cash they obtained from the clandestine sale of natural resources such as oil, gold, diamonds, and possibly coltan. These planes made frequent direct flights from Venezuela to Turkey and Russia, transporting gold and diamonds, and returned with large sums of money that were later used to finance vital operations of the regime, make triangulated purchases with companies created for this purpose in tax havens, and this way we can maintain internal loyalties and the silence of the regime's accomplices. The aircraft network included the use of aircraft with Venezuelan and Turkish registration plates. The most important aircraft used in this operation are clearly identified, as are their routes. The Turkish registered aircraft that were used are the following: Gulfstream G550 registration TC GUT and also TC-JYS, a Bombardier Global 8000 registration TC IYA, Bombardier Global Express 7000 registration TC CSR, Bombardier Global 5000 registration TC JYS, Bombardier Challenger 604, while the planes with Venezuelan registration plates were Learjet 25 plates, YV3117, YV2873, and also YV387, Learjet 55 license plate, YV32238. These planes were the most suitable for these maneuvers because they have the capacity to fly long distances without stops, which allowed Maduro and his accomplices to carry out efficient and discreet transportation of gold, diamonds, cash, and even compromising documentation. The planes used in the operation were registered under various companies, some of which were already under investigation for their connection to illicit activities, and others are only now coming to light. We present them to you. MNG Jet Aerospace Inc., based in Istanbul. It is involved in the registration and operation of several aircraft used by the Venezuelan regime. Dubai-based Success Aviation Services is another key operator in the air transport network, with aircraft registered under its name. SBK Holding, based in Turkey. The company is controlled by Sezgin Baran Korkmaz, a Turkish businessman with close ties to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. This holding company played a crucial role in facilitating flight operations and money transportation. How did this secret network work? The operation was more or less the same and depended on the amount of gold bars that could be separated without audit in the Orinoco mining arc, which is controlled by true mafias that exploit Venezuelans and destroy the entire ecosystem in their voracity. Economical. There are multiple reports about the real ecocide they have committed. The operation included frequent flights linking the Arco Minero in Venezuela with the banks in Istanbul and Moscow, favorite cities of the Maduro clan. One of the most notable flights occurred in 2018, when a Gulfstream G550 jet took off from Istanbul to Venezuela with 13 passengers, including Nicolás Maduro Guerra, known as Nicolásito. The plane was carrying tens of millions of euros in cash, hidden in the cargo compartment. The flight routes of the aircraft fleet were repeated with certain frequency, linking the same destinations. Moscow to Maiquetía, another key route in the operation, with multiple flights registered. Dubai to Maiquetía used to move resources and money between Venezuela and the United Arab Emirates. These routes were operated without going through customs or police controls, following orders from senior officials of the regime. The network was specifically designed to evade sanctions imposed by the United States, which had closed numerous sources of financing for the regime. Using this secret operation, Maduro and his entourage managed to maintain a parallel economy that allowed them to finance internal programs and enrich themselves personally. The money entered into Venezuela was used to finance the CLAP, Local Supply and Production Committee's program, with inflated contracts that benefited companies in Maduro's circle. These transactions, presented as legitimate, were actually part of a large money laundering operation, as we evidenced in the latest published video. The main companies that benefited from the use of money or directly from payment in gold were the following: Group Grand Limited, a Hong Kong-based company that has been linked to the sale of food for the KILAP program. Postar Intertrade Limited, registered in Panama, operated by partners close to Tarek El Aissami. There were also operations with various entities registered in tax havens to hide the real ownership and facilitate money laundering. And among the main actors involved in this network are people and officials who, faced with the desperation generated by the obvious countdown of this regime, are being imprisoned for treason. The operations data involve Nicolás Maduro, leader of the entire criminal organization, Nicolásito Maduro Guerra, son of the previous one and one of those responsible for the clandestine operations, together with the Moron brothers. Tarek El Aissami, former vice president and senior official of PDVSA, now detained for corruption reasons. His whereabouts are a mystery, as it was the last year until his reported arrest. Santiago Moron, personal assistant to Nicolásito, a key person in the operation, and now also detained in Caracas, to be used as a bargaining chip in an eventual agreement with the United States for Maduro's impunity. Simon Serpa Delgado, partner of El Aissami, and also detained as part of the cross-betrayal scheme that indicates the end of the regime's loyalties. Celia Flores, wife of Nicolás Maduro, and participant in some of the flights. These people, along with other officials and businessmen, formed the core of the operation, managing both the collection of resources and the transportation and distribution of money. This perverse mechanism, behind the backs of its people, allowed the Maduro regime to maintain its power and financing, evading international sanctions and in parallel diverting funds to the darkest destinations in collaboration with international partners. The continuity of movements, the frequency of flights, and the proliferation of offshore companies from tax havens led to increased surveillance of these cases and the initiation of legal actions by international authorities, especially the United States. The United States Department of the Treasury has been investigating this network, seeking to establish violations of established sanctions and to build a map of the flow of money and resources. An aircraft cannot simply take off and fly wherever it wants, because with enormous air traffic, routes must be programmed to avoid collisions in flight. The reports on the flight routes, the passenger records of each aircraft, the registration numbers of those aircraft, and the details of the runways, hangars, and special doors that were used at each of the airports allow us to corroborate that there are no baggage controls in any of the destinations of these private flights to or from Venezuela. However, the volume of trafficking in money, gold, and even suspected drugs is so high that in addition to the use of private planes, the Venezuelan government has had to resort to the use of diplomatic bags, which is much more risky and striking. These suitcases, being under diplomatic protection, are exempt from customs controls. That is, they are inviolable and do not have to undergo the X-ray examinations or visual content inspection that any international airport has. The traffic maneuvers that Maduro carries out with the countries that support his regime end up generating a scandal in each of the airports in which, due to some carelessness, leak, or such scandalous use, they were exposed. As in the case of Spain on January 19, 2020 at 12:30 p.m., the Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, arrived on a private plane registration TCAKE of the Sky Valet Company. Her final destination was Istanbul, Turkey, but for some reason they diverted to Spanish skies and she ended up landing at the Barajas airport in Madrid, even though she was prohibited from entering the European Union due to having received international sanctions. She did it in the executive terminal of the airport, and according to eyewitnesses in court, they unloaded about 40 suitcases without passing any type of security check. The case became known as Delcigat and is an unresolved scandal involving socialist President Pedro Sanchez as Delcy Rodriguez met with Spain's transport minister José Luis Ábalos. But on March 3, 2023, the Venezuelan government of Nicolás Maduro reintroduced 79 packages into Spain via a Plus Ultra company plane. It is what could be called a Delcigate 2, using the same operation as in the previous case. The difference this time is that of the 79 packages, 50 were suitcases and 29 were boxes. All the packages were marked as diplomatic bags, they did not pass any security checks and were collected at the Madrid airport by personnel from the Venezuelan embassy in Madrid. The modality and business between countries of governments that call themselves progressive is not new. Already in August 2007, in Argentina, there was the case of the Venezuelan citizen Antonini Wilson, who arrived in the country as part of a delegation and tried to bring a suitcase with $790,550 through the south terminal of the Jorge Newbery airport. But he had the bad luck that he ran into a random control where his suitcase was confiscated for not having declared it minutes before when he was asked about the contents. The case had wide media coverage because it coincided with Cristina Fernández de Kirchner's presidential campaign. Wilson left the country without making any claim to the suitcase and its contents. How many suitcases will have been brought in so that losing one will not be considered a problem when making a claim? Only in October 2021, also in Spain, former Venezuelan General Hugo Armando Carvajal Barrios, detained in Madrid and considered the most wanted fugitive in the United States for drug trafficking, testified before the Spanish justice system and affirmed before the judge that the government Venezuelan contributed $21 million to the electoral campaign of Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. The file says verbatim, "While I was Director of Military Intelligence and Counterintelligence of Venezuela, I received a large number of reports indicating that this international financing was occurring. Specific examples are Néstor Kirchner in Argentina, Evo Morales in Bolivia, Lula da Silva in Brazil, Fernando Lugo in Paraguay, Ollanta Humala in Peru, Zelaya in Honduras, Gustavo Petro in Colombia, the Five Star Movement in Italy, and Podemos in Spain." It is evident that Chavismo acted in complicity with other major power factors in each country. With all this history of economic contributions and secret ties, it is very easy to understand why all these governments were never willing to denounce the serious situation in Venezuela. It is clear that they were all partners in the project they called the Big Country, and it consisted of spreading socialism throughout the region. The problem is that the people who paid the cost were the people, and what they expected was to improve their quality of life and not fall precipitously into poverty and famine. Today, you can look back and discover that these towns became poorer, and those same politicians who governed them are multi-millionaires thanks to the looting of each country. Party ideologies were their own condemnation, as we present in the most hopeful report called Javier Milei and Maria Corina Machado Move the Ideological Pendulum, and which is available on our channel. We suggest watching it to understand the process. All current investigations and judicial processes against Venezuelan officials and politicians highlight the urgent need to achieve greater scrutiny in the July 28th election process and to support the achievement of a transparent and peaceful political transition in Venezuela. A country so rich in resources cannot continue to be overwhelmed by a gang of criminals protected by their international economic ties that forces them to remain silent so as not to incriminate themselves with the money trafficking that benefited each candidate in the region in the financing of their electoral campaigns. Nicolás Maduro's secret network for moving cash has been a crucial piece in the survival of his regime. Through the complex air operation, not only did he manage to evade sanctions and launder money, but also Maduro and his close circle managed to maintain tight control over Venezuela and its economic resources. However, international investigations continue. They have left many traces in the looting and are already in the final stage of a process in which loyalties end, cross-betrayals begin, and the desire to save one's own skin is making them unknown to each other. Those who were partners or had bought their silence It is very likely that more details about this operation and its implications will begin to be revealed in the near future. The lack of resources to buy wills will give rise to the Venezuelan army itself being able to recognize itself as the guarantor of true democracy, and starting from the results of July 28th, stop obeying the 200 or 300 hierarchs who forced all the force to confront the people because they received a benefit that has already ended. They are also victims of the regime. This report seeks to shed light on the tactics used by the Maduro regime and the importance of international surveillance of electoral processes and the fight against corruption and money laundering. The complexity and scope of this operation highlight the need for international collaboration to dismantle these networks and ensure that those responsible face justice, and we are not just referring to the members of the Maduro regime, but to all the international contacts that continue to support from power an unacceptable situation for Latin America. You have to take off their mask. Can Venezuela free itself from the parasites that entrench themselves in power by lying to their people about a better future that will never come this way? We read them in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to receive the next video. On the final screen, we leave you a list of complimentary reports and the suggestion of another video that we think will interest you. You just have to click. See you next video.